Marcus Chin stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse office on the 72nd floor, watching the city lights blur through tears he refused to let fall. At 33, he had everything the world told him to want: a billion-dollar tech empire, a face that graced magazine covers, and enough wealth to buy anything except the one thing that mattered: a reason to wake up tomorrow. The skyline of Manhattan glittered below him like a sea of broken promises. Each light represented someone going home to family, to love, to a life that meant something beyond quarterly earnings and stock prices. Marcus pressed his palm against the cold glass, feeling nothing but the familiar emptiness that had become his constant companion. His phone buzzed for the 100th time that evening. Investors. Board members. People who saw him as nothing more than a cash machine with a heartbeat. He'd stopped answering hours ago. What did it matter? The company would survive without him. In fact, it might thrive. He'd built systems so efficient that Marcus Chin the person had become redundant, a ghost haunting his own success. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd spent 15 years building Chenatech from a dorm room startup to a global powerhouse. 15 years of 80-hour weeks, missed birthdays, abandoned friendships, and relationships that withered under the weight of his ambition. His parents had begged him to slow down, to find balance, to remember that life was more than profit margins. They died in a car accident 2 years ago, still waiting for him to come home for a visit he'd kept postponing. That was when the darkness had really begun to settle in. Without them, there was no one left who knew Marcus, the boy who'd loved stargazing and terrible puns, who dreamed of changing the world not through technology, but through connection. Everyone else only knew Marcus Chin, the billionaire, the genius, the untouchable titan of industry. He'd become a stranger to himself. Tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight, he'd planned to end it all. He'd written the letters, arranged his affairs, and made sure his employees would be taken care of. The company would go to his executive team. His fortune would fund scholarships and research grants. Everyone would be fine. Better than fine, probably. They'd mourn the appropriate amount of time, then move on with their lives while he finally found peace. The cleaning service was supposed to come tomorrow morning. He'd timed it perfectly so that someone would find him quickly, professionally. No mess for anyone he cared about, because there wasn't anyone left who cared about him beyond what he could provide. Marcus turned from the window and walked to his desk, where a bottle of pills sat next to a glass of scotch. His hands trembled as he reached for them. This was it. The final decision of a man who'd made thousands of decisions that had affected millions of lives. This one would only affect his own. As he opened the bottle, the sound of the office door clicking shut made him freeze. He'd been certain he was alone. The cleaning service wasn't scheduled until morning, and his assistant had left hours ago. His heart began to pound, not from fear of being interrupted, but from the sudden, crushing weight of being caught at his most vulnerable moment. "Hello." A woman's voice, tentative and apologetic, echoed through the empty office. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know anyone was still here. I'm with the new evening cleaning service. They changed our schedule today." Marcus quickly shoved the pill bottle into his desk drawer, his hand shaking. He wiped his face and tried to compose himself, but his voice came out rough and broken. "It's fine. I was just leaving." But he didn't move. Couldn't move. His legs felt like lead, his body betraying the lie his words had told. Footsteps approached, then stopped. "Sir? Mr. Chin? Are you all right?" He turned to see a young woman in a simple cleaning service uniform, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She carried a bucket of supplies in one hand, and her brown eyes held a mixture of concern and uncertainty. She was pretty in an understated way, with the kind of face that seemed incapable of pretense. "I'm fine, Marcus said automatically, the same lie he'd been telling for 2 years. Please go ahead with your work. Don't mind me. The woman hesitated, then nodded slowly. She didn't look convinced, but she was too polite or too professional to push. She began moving through the office, cleaning quietly while Marcus stood frozen by his desk, his carefully laid plans suddenly derailed by the most mundane of interruptions. He should have felt angry. Instead, he felt exhausted. Maybe this was a sign. Maybe he should try again tomorrow night. Or maybe... A small sound broke through his thoughts. A giggle, high-pitched and pure, coming from somewhere near the office entrance. The cleaning woman's head snapped up, her expression shifting from professional calm to sudden panic. Lily, she called out, dropping her supplies and rushing toward the door. Sweetheart, I told you to wait in the hall. Marcus watched as a tiny figure toddled into his office, a little girl, no more than 3 years old, with wild curls bouncing around her cherubic face. She wore pajamas covered in cartoon stars and carried a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. Her eyes, bright and curious, swept across the vast office with wonder. Mama, big room, the child announced, spreading her arms wide as if to encompass the entire space. Then her gaze landed on Marcus, and she beamed at him with a kind of unguarded joy that he hadn't seen in years. Hi. The woman scooped up the child quickly, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. I'm so sorry, Mr. Chun. My babysitter canceled at the last minute, and I couldn't afford to miss this shift. I told her to wait outside. I promise she won't. It's okay, Marcus heard himself say, and he was surprised to find that he meant it. Something about the child's uninhibited happiness had pierced through the fog of his despair, if only for a moment. Really? It's fine. The little girl wiggled in her mother's arms, reaching toward Marcus with chubby hands. You sad? She asked with the blunt honesty only children possess. Why you crying? The cleaning woman, her name tag read Elena Rodriguez, looked mortified. She tried to cover her daughter's mouth gently while apologizing profusely, but Marcus found himself stepping closer instead of walking away. Lily, we don't ask people personal questions like that, Elena whispered urgently to her daughter, but the little girl's attention remained fixed on Marcus with an intensity that was both unnerving and oddly comforting. It's all right, Marcus said again, though his voice cracked slightly. He knelt down to be at eye level with the child, something he couldn't remember ever doing before. Up close, he could see that Lily's bright eyes held flecks of gold in their brown depths, and her smile revealed a gap where her front tooth should have been. I am a little sad, he admitted, the truth spilling out before he could stop it. But I'll be okay. Lily studied him with the serious consideration of a 3-year-old philosopher. Then, without warning, she lunged forward from her mother's arms and wrapped her small hands around Marcus's neck in a fierce hug. She smelled like baby shampoo and something sweet, cookies, maybe, or candy. There, she announced, pulling back and patting his cheek with one sticky hand. All better. Hugs fix everything. Mama says so. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest, a fissure in the carefully constructed walls he'd built around his heart. He'd forgotten what it felt like to be touched with simple kindness, with no agenda or expectation. When was the last time someone had hugged him because they wanted to comfort him, not because they wanted something from him? Lily, honey, let Mr. Chin go, Elena said, gently pulling her daughter back. Her voice was strained with embarrassment, but when Marcus looked up at her, he saw tears glistening in her eyes too. I really am so sorry. We'll just go. Please don't report this to the cleaning company. I can't afford to lose this job. The fear in her voice snapped Marcus out of his momentary reverie. He stood up, suddenly aware of the power imbalance between them, the billionaire and the cleaning woman who was terrified of losing her minimum wage job because her daughter had shown basic human decency. No, he said firmly. Please don't go. I mean, finish your work. Take your time. Your daughter isn't bothering me. He paused, then added more quietly. Actually, she helped. Elena looked at him uncertainly, clearly trying to gauge whether this was some kind of test or trap. Marcus recognized that look. He'd seen it on the faces of his employees, his business partners, everyone who interacted with him. They were always trying to figure out what he wanted, what would please him, what would keep them safe from his power. No one ever just looked at him and saw a person. Except, apparently, a 3-year-old named Lily. Are you sure? Elena asked softly. I can come back tomorrow night if you need privacy. I don't want to intrude. Marcus thought about the pills in his desk drawer, about his plans for the evening, about the vast emptiness of the penthouse that awaited him. The idea of being alone with his thoughts again made his stomach turn. Actually, he found himself saying, would it be all right if I talked with you while you worked? I could use the company. The admission cost him something. Marcus Chin didn't admit to needing anything or anyone. But tonight, standing in the wreckage of his carefully planned exit, he found he didn't have the energy to pretend anymore. Elena's expression softened with understanding, and Marcus realized with a start that she knew. Maybe not the specifics, maybe not the depth of his despair, but she recognized the look of someone barely holding on. He could see it in the way her shoulders relaxed slightly, in the gentle kindness that replaced the professional wariness in her eyes. Of course, she said. I'd be happy to have some adult conversation for a change. Most nights it's just me and Lily, and while she's wonderful company, her vocabulary is a bit limited. She smiled, a warm expression that transformed her tired face into something genuinely beautiful. Lily had toddled over to the window, pressing her nose against the glass to stare at the city lights below. Stars, she exclaimed. Mama, look. So many stars. Those are building lights, sweetheart, not stars, Elena corrected gently, setting down her supplies and beginning to work on dusting the bookshelves that lined one wall. They look like stars to her, Marcus said, walking over to stand beside Lily. He looked down at the city with her, trying to see it through her eyes, not as a monument to human ambition and greed, but as something beautiful and full of wonder. I used to love looking at real stars when I was young. Me too, Lily bounced excitedly. Mama shows me stars from our window sometimes. They're up in the sky. She pointed upward dramatically. Marcus felt a pang in his chest. From your window? Where do you live? Elena's hands stilled on the bookshelf for just a moment. In the Bronx. We have a small apartment on the top floor of our building. The roof access is broken, so sometimes we can go up there at night when Lily can't sleep. The light pollution makes it hard to see many stars, but we make do with what we can find. There was no bitterness in her voice, just simple acceptance of her circumstances. Marcus tried to imagine what Elena's life must be like, working night shifts to make ends meet, raising a child alone. He noticed there was no ring on her finger, living in a small apartment while he occupied 5,000 square feet of luxury 50 floors above the city. Your daughter is lucky to have a mother who shows her stars, he said quietly. Elena looked at him with surprise, then smiled that warm smile again. I'm lucky to have her. She's my reason for everything. She paused in her cleaning to watch Lily, who was now making up a song about the stars outside the window, her little voice filling the office with off-key melody. Being a parent changes you. Suddenly, your life isn't about you anymore. It's about making sure this small person knows they're loved, that they're safe, that the world has beautiful things in it worth seeing. Marcus felt the crack in his chest widen. When was the last time he believed the world had beautiful things worth seeing? When had his life stopped being about connection and started being only about achievement? It must be hard, though, he said. Raising her on your own. Working these hours. Elena's expression flickered with something. Pain, maybe. Or old wounds not quite healed. Her father left when I was pregnant. Said he wasn't ready for the responsibility. She continued dusting, her movements steady despite the heavy topic. It is hard. I won't lie. There are nights when I don't know how I'll pay rent, when I'm so tired I could cry, when I worry that I'm failing her. But then she looks at me with those big eyes and tells me I'm the best mama in the world, and somehow I find the strength to keep going. You're not failing her, Marcus said with conviction. Anyone can see she's loved. That matters more than anything else. Thank you, Elena said softly, meeting his eyes. But forgive me for saying this, Mr. Chen. You look like someone who's forgotten that he matters to someone too. The observation hit him like a physical blow. Marcus turned back to the window, his reflection ghostly in the glass. There's no one left who cares about me, he said, the admission scraping his throat raw. Not really. My parents are gone. I don't have siblings. I've pushed away everyone who ever tried to get close. People know Marcus Chen the billionaire, but nobody knows me. He could see Elena's reflection in the window, watching him with an expression of profound sadness. That sounds incredibly lonely. It is, Marcus whispered, and felt the tears he'd been holding back finally start to fall. Lily appeared at his side, tugging on his pant leg. You crying again? She observed matter-of-factly. Then she held up her stuffed rabbit. Mr. Hoppy helps when I'm sad. You can hold him. Marcus looked down at the worn toy being offered to him with such generosity, and something inside him broke completely. He sank to the floor, his back against the window, and accepted the rabbit. Lily climbed into his lap without invitation, curling up against his chest like she belonged there. It's okay to be sad, she told him seriously, patting his hand. But you're not alone. Me and Mama here now. And surrounded by the simple warmth of a child who barely knew him and a woman who was showing him more compassion than he'd felt in years, Marcus Chen let himself cry for the first time since his parents died. Elena gave Marcus the gift of not making a fuss. She didn't rush over with tissue or awkward comfort. She simply continued her work, humming softly along with Lily's occasional interjections, while Marcus pulled himself back together with the stuffed rabbit clutched in his hands and the child still nestled trustingly in his lap. After a few minutes, Lily extracted herself and wandered over to Marcus's desk, fascinated by the array of high-tech gadgets and the framed photographs that decorated the surface. "Who's this?" she asked, pointing to a picture of a young Marcus with an older couple, all three of them laughing at something off-camera. Marcus's throat tightened. "Those are my parents. That was taken at my college graduation." "They look happy," Lily observed with her characteristic directness. "Where are they now?" Elena started to interject, but Marcus shook his head. "It's okay. They're gone now. They died a couple of years ago." Lily's face crumpled with sympathy. "That's very sad. I bet you miss them lots and lots." "I do," Marcus admitted, surprised by how much it helped to say it out loud to someone who didn't immediately try to fix it or minimize it. "Every single day." "My daddy's gone too," Lily shared, her tone matter-of-fact despite the weight of the statement. "But Mama says that's okay because we have each other, and love doesn't need a daddy if the mama loves double." Elena's face flushed, and she looked embarrassed. "Lily's sweetheart, I don't think Mr. Chen needs to hear about our family situation." "Actually," Marcus said, standing up and moving to sit in one of the chairs near where Elena was working, "I'd like to hear more. If you're comfortable sharing. I've spent the last few hours alone with my thoughts, and they haven't been good company." Elena studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. She pulled over a chair and sat down, and Lily immediately climbed into her lap. The contrast between them, mother and daughter, clearly struggling but wrapped in love, made Marcus's heart ache with longing for something he'd never even known he wanted. "There's not much to tell," Elena began. "I met Lily's father when I was 24. He was charming and exciting, and I fell hard. When I got pregnant, I thought he'd step up. Instead, he told me to take care of it and left. I couldn't do that. I couldn't give her up. So I had her, and I've been raising her on my own ever since. Do you regret it? Marcus asked quietly. Keeping her, I mean. It must have been so hard. Elena looked down at her daughter with such fierce love that it took Marcus's breath away. Not for a single second. Is it hard? Yes. There are days when I work 3 jobs and still can't pay all the bills. Days when I feed her and go to bed hungry myself. Days when I'm so exhausted that I fall asleep standing up on the subway. But then she does something like learn a new word, or brings home a drawing from daycare, or tells me she loves me, and all of it, every struggle, every sacrifice is worth it. Lily, picking up on the serious tone, squeezed her mother's hand. I love you, Mama. You're the bestest. I love you too, baby, Elena whispered, kissing the top of her daughter's head. Marcus watched the exchange, feeling like an anthropologist observing a foreign culture. This was love, simple and pure and uncomplicated by money or power or expectations. This was what he'd been missing his entire life while he chased success. I wish I'd had that, he said before he could stop himself. My parents loved me, but I was so focused on proving myself, on building the company, that I barely spent time with them. I kept thinking there would be more time later. That once I hit the next milestone, I could slow down and really connect with them. But there was always another milestone, and then they were gone, and all I have left is regret. Elena leaned forward, her expression gentle but direct. So, what are you doing here tonight, Marcus? And please, forgive my boldness, but when I walked in, you looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff. Marcus should have deflected, should have thrown up his walls, and changed the subject. But something about Elena's calm presence and Lily's unconditional acceptance made him want to be honest for once. I was, he admitted. I am. I've spent the last 2 years wondering what the point of any of this is. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I've won every award, exceeded every goal. But I wake up every morning in a penthouse that feels like a tomb, and I go through my day surrounded by people who see me as nothing more than a means to an end. I don't have friends. I don't have family. I don't have anyone who cares whether I live or die. That's not true, Elena said firmly. You have employees who depend on you. You have people whose lives you've changed with your innovations. You have people who would replace me in a heartbeat if I disappeared tomorrow, Marcus interrupted. The company would continue. Someone else would step into my role. Life would go on without Marcus Chin. Maybe, Elena conceded. But that doesn't mean you don't matter. It just means you've built something bigger than yourself, which is actually pretty remarkable. She paused, then added, though I think the real problem isn't that no one would care if you were gone. It's that you've convinced yourself you're not worthy of being cared about. The observation struck too close to home. Marcus looked away, but Elena continued speaking, her voice gentle but insistent. I don't know what happened to make you believe that your value is only in what you produce or provide. But I can tell you, as someone who works 3 jobs and still barely scrapes by, that wealth and success aren't what make life worth living. Connection is. Love is. The feeling of being seen and known by another person, that's what matters. How do I find that? Marcus asked, hating how desperate he sounded. I don't even know where to start. I've forgotten how to be a person instead of a brand. Lily, who had been quietly listening with the seriousness children sometimes adopt when adults are talking about important things, suddenly spoke up. You start with friends. Me and you are friends now. Right, Mama? Elena smiled, and Marcus saw tears in her eyes. Right, baby. We're friends with Mr. Chin now. It's Marcus, he said quickly. Please, just call me Marcus. I think I've had enough of being Mr. Chin for one lifetime. Okay, Marcus, Elena said warmly. We're friends with Marcus now. The simple declaration shouldn't have meant as much as it did, but Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a tiny spark of warmth in the cold emptiness that had consumed him for so long. Can I ask you something? He said to Elena. How do you do it? How do you keep going when things are hard? What keeps you from giving up? Elena looked at Lily, then back at Marcus. I keep going because she needs me. Because every day, I get to see the world through her eyes, and everything is new and wonderful and full of possibility. I get to be the person who makes her feel safe and loved. That's not just responsibility, it's privilege. It's purpose. She paused, considering her words carefully. But I think the deeper answer is that I've learned to find joy in small things. A good cup of coffee. The way the sunlight comes through our window in the morning. Lily's laugh. These tiny moments add up to a life worth living, even when the big picture is overwhelming. Marcus tried to remember the last time he'd paid attention to a small moment of joy. He couldn't. Everything in his life had been about the big picture, the long-term strategy, the next acquisition or product launch. He'd forgotten how to be present. I don't know if I remember how to notice those things, he admitted. Then learn, Elena said simply. Start small. Tomorrow morning, before you check your phone or think about work, find one thing that's beautiful. It could be the color of the sky, or the taste of your coffee, or the sound of birds outside your window. Just one thing. And then do it again the next day and the next. That seems too simple, Marcus said skeptically. How can noticing small things fix everything that's wrong with my life? It can't, Elena agreed. But it can remind you that there are things worth living for, even when you can't see the bigger reasons. It can build a foundation of appreciation that makes the hard days more bearable. She shifted Lily in her lap, smoothing down the child's wild curls. Depression and loneliness are heavy burdens, Marcus. I'm not going to pretend that noticing pretty things will cure them. But sometimes, survival is about finding enough small reasons to keep going until the bigger reasons reveal themselves. Marcus absorbed her words, feeling the truth in them even as part of him wanted to resist. It seemed almost insulting that the solution to his existential crisis could be as simple as paying attention to coffee and sunlight. But then again, what had his complex strategies and grand ambitions gotten him? A penthouse office on the 72nd floor where he'd planned to end his life. Maybe simple was what he needed. They talked for hours. Elena worked while they conversed, and Lily eventually curled up on the leather couch in Marcus's office, clutching Mr. Hoppy and drifting off to sleep. The conversation flowed easily, touching on everything from Elena's childhood in the Bronx to Marcus's early days coding in his dorm room, from their favorite books to their biggest fears. Marcus learned that Elena had been studying to be a teacher before she got pregnant, but had to drop out to work full-time. She dreamed of going back someday, of standing in front of a classroom and inspiring kids the way her favorite teacher had inspired her. She worked the night shift cleaning offices because it paid slightly better than day shifts, and she could spend mornings and afternoons with Lily before dropping her at her mother's house for the evenings. My mom helps when she can, Elena explained, but she has her own health issues and can't do as much as she'd like. So I juggle. We make it work. You shouldn't have to just make it work, Marcus said, frustration creeping into his voice. Not at Elena, but at the system that forced capable, intelligent people to sacrifice their dreams just to survive. You should be able to finish your degree. Lily should have everything she needs without you working yourself to exhaustion. Elena looked at him with surprise. That's very kind of you to say. But that's not how the world works for people like me. Maybe it should be, Marcus said, and an idea began to form in his mind. But he pushed it aside for now, not wanting to turn the conversation into something transactional. For the first time in years, He was connecting with someone as just Marcus, not as Marcus Chin the billionaire, and he didn't want to ruin it. Instead, he asked, "What's your favorite thing about being Lily's mom?" Elena's face lit up. The way she sees magic in everything. Yesterday, we saw a pigeon on the street, and she insisted it was a dove bringing us messages from heaven. Last week, she decided that the radiator in our apartment was actually a dragon that kept us warm because it liked us. She makes up stories about everyone we meet. The bodega owner is secretly a retired superhero. Our neighbor is a princess in disguise. Her imagination is limitless, and it reminds me that the world doesn't have to be just what we see on the surface. Marcus smiled, really smiled, for the first time in months. She told me earlier that the building lights were stars. I love how she reimagines things to be more wonderful than they are. That's because she hasn't learned yet that she's supposed to be disappointed by reality, Elena said, a hint of sadness in her voice. I dread the day when the world teaches her to stop seeing magic. Don't let it, Marcus said with sudden intensity. Keep showing her the stars, even when they're just building lights. Keep telling her stories. Keep protecting that sense of wonder. It's precious. More valuable than anything money can buy. Elena looked at him with understanding. You had that once too, didn't you? That sense of wonder? Marcus nodded, memories flooding back. I used to build makeshift telescopes out of cardboard tubes and magnifying glasses. I'd spend hours reading science fiction, imagining the future. I wanted to change the world, but not to be rich or famous. I wanted to do it because I thought technology could make life better for people, could connect us in meaningful ways. He laughed bitterly. Somewhere along the way, that got lost. The technology became about market share and user acquisition, not about human connection. It's not too late, Elena said. You could go back to that original vision. Refocus your company on what you actually care about. Maybe, Marcus said, though doubt clouded his voice. I'm not sure I even know how anymore. The company has shareholders and board members and expectations. It's not just mine to steer wherever I want. But you're still the majority shareholder, right? You're still the founder. When Marcus nodded, Elena continued, then you have more power than you think. The question is whether you're willing to use it, even if it means disappointing people who expect you to prioritize profit over purpose. Marcus sat with that question, feeling the weight of it. For so long, he'd let others dictate his path, measuring success by their standards instead of his own. What would it mean to reclaim his company, his life, his sense of purpose? Before he could respond, Lily stirred on the couch, sitting up groggily. Mama? I'm thirsty. Elena stood immediately, checking her watch and wincing. Oh, honey, it's so late. I'm sorry, I should have gotten you to bed hours ago. She looked at Marcus apologetically. I need to finish up quickly and get her home. Wait, Marcus said, an idea crystallizing. Before you go, can I ask you both something? Elena nodded, and Lily toddled over, rubbing her eyes with small fists. Marcus knelt down to Lily's level again. Would you and your mom like to come back tomorrow evening? Not for cleaning, just to visit. Maybe we could order dinner, and you could teach me more about your star dragons and secret princesses. Lily's face broke into a huge grin. Yes. We can have a party. But Elena looked uncertain. Marcus, that's very sweet, but you don't need to do that. This isn't, she struggled to find words. You're a billionaire. We're nobody special. You're wrong, Marcus said firmly, standing to face her. You're the people who reminded me that I'm human, not just a stock ticker. You're the people who showed me that connection is possible, that I'm not irredeemably broken. That makes you very special indeed. He softened his tone. Please. I'm not trying to buy your friendship or make this weird. I don't want to go back to being alone with my thoughts. Not yet. Not when I've just remembered what it feels like to actually talk to someone. Elena's expression wavered between caution and compassion. Finally, she nodded slowly. Okay, but only if you promise this is because you want company, not because you feel sorry for us or think you need to rescue us. I won't be anyone's charity case. I promise, Marcus said, and he meant it. This is entirely selfish. I want to see you both again. They exchanged phone numbers, and Elena finished her cleaning while Lily told Marcus an elaborate story about a kingdom where everyone rode giant rabbits instead of horses. As they prepared to leave, Lily hugged Marcus again, and he found himself holding on a little longer this time, memorizing the feeling of being embraced without expectation. See you tomorrow, friend, Lily whispered seriously, and Marcus felt tears prick his eyes again. See you tomorrow, he whispered back. After they left, Marcus stood alone in his office, the silence now feeling different than it had before. It was still quiet, but it wasn't quite as oppressive. He walked over to his desk and opened the drawer, looking at the bottle of pills that had been his intended solution just hours earlier. Slowly, deliberately, he picked up the bottle and walked to the bathroom. He poured the pills into the toilet and flushed them away, watching them disappear. It wasn't a cure for his depression, wasn't a magical fix for everything broken in his life. But it was a choice to stay, at least for another day, to find out what tomorrow might bring. He pulled out his phone and set a reminder for the next morning. Find one beautiful thing. Then Marcus Chun went home to his empty penthouse, and for the first time in 2 years, he fell asleep thinking about something other than ending his pain. He fell asleep thinking about a little girl who saw stars where others saw only lights, and a woman who had shown him that surviving could be an act of courage. He fell asleep thinking about tomorrow. Section 5. The beginning of everything. Marcus woke to sunlight streaming through his penthouse windows, and his first thought wasn't about board meetings or stock prices. It was about the reminder he'd set for himself. Find one beautiful thing. He got out of bed and walked to the window, coffee in hand, and really looked at the city for the first time in months. The morning light painted the buildings in shades of gold and amber, and he watched as the city slowly came to life. Joggers in the park below, vendors setting up fruit stands, a father walking his daughter to school. Each person with their own story, their own struggles and joys and moments of connection. That was his beautiful thing for today, watching the world wake up and remembering he was part of it, not separate from it. The day passed differently than his usual routine. Marcus still attended his meetings and reviewed reports, but he found himself actually listening when people spoke instead of just waiting for his turn to talk. He asked his assistant about her weekend and learned she'd just gotten engaged. He complimented the building's security guard on the photos of his grandchildren he kept on his desk. Small gestures, perhaps, but they reminded Marcus that he existed in a web of human connections, not in isolation. By the time evening approached, Marcus found himself genuinely excited for the first time in years. He'd ordered food from a family-owned Italian restaurant Elena had mentioned liking, nothing too extravagant, just good, honest food. He'd cleared a space in his office and set up a makeshift picnic area with blankets and cushions, trying to make the sterile space more welcoming for a 3-year-old. When Elena and Lily arrived, Lily's eyes went wide with delight. Inside picnic. Mama, look. Elena smiled at Marcus over her daughter's head, her expression warm with gratitude and something else, maybe hope that this strange friendship could be real. You didn't have to go to all this trouble. I wanted to, Marcus said simply. Besides, Lily told me yesterday that all the best parties have indoor picnics. I couldn't disappoint her. They settled in to eat, and the conversation flowed as naturally as it had the night before. Lily entertained them with stories from her daycare, complete with dramatic reenactments of the playground politics between 3-year-olds. Marcus found himself laughing, really laughing, at her animated descriptions of who had taken whose toy and how they'd resolved it through the intervention of Teacher Sarah, who's very wise and sometimes magic. "How was your day?" Elena asked Marcus as they were finishing the meal. "Did you find your beautiful thing this morning?" Marcus was touched that she remembered. "I did. I watched the city wake up. And I started noticing the people around me, really seeing them as people, not just functions in my day." "That's wonderful," Elena said warmly. "Every day it gets a little easier. I promise." "I have something I want to talk to you both about," Marcus said, nervous suddenly. He'd been thinking about this all day, and he needed to approach it carefully so Elena wouldn't feel like he was trying to buy her friendship or turn her into a charity case. Elena's expression became guarded. "Okay. I've been thinking about what you said last night," Marcus began. "About how I could refocus my company on what I actually care about, on human connection instead of just profit." He took a breath. "I want to start a new initiative. An education program that provides full scholarships, childcare support, and living stipends for single parents who want to finish their degrees. I want to call it the Second Chances Program." Elena's eyes widened. "Marcus, that's incredible. That would change so many lives." "I want you to help me build it," Marcus continued. "Not as a recipient, though you'd qualify if you wanted to participate, but as a partner. You know what single parents need, because you live it. You understand the barriers and challenges in a way I never could. I need someone who can make sure this program actually helps real people, not just check boxes on paper." "I don't have any experience with program development," Elena protested, though Marcus could see the spark of interest in her eyes. "I'm a cleaning woman and a student teacher. I don't know anything about running a foundation. But you know about teaching, about caring for children, about what matters in education. That's more valuable than any business degree." Marcus leaned forward. "I can hire people who understand nonprofit structures and grant management. What I need is someone who understands the heart of what we're trying to do. Someone who will keep me honest and make sure we're actually making a difference." Lily, who had been playing with Mr. Hoppy, suddenly piped up. "Mama should say yes. You're very good at helping people, Mama." Elena laughed through tears that had started to fall. "Baby, this is a grown-up decision. It's more complicated than that." "Not really," Marcus said gently. "Either you trust that this offer is genuine and I value what you bring to the table, or you don't. Either you want to help other parents get the second chance you wished you'd had, or you don't. The rest is just details we can figure out together." Elena looked at her daughter, then at Marcus, then down at her hands. When she looked up again, her expression was determined. "If we do this, I need some ground rules. First, I don't want any special treatment in the program structure just because I helped design it. Second, I need to be able to continue being Lily's mom first. I won't sacrifice time with her, even for a good cause. Third, you have to promise me that if I'm wrong about something or make a mistake, you'll tell me directly instead of just quietly overruling me." Marcus felt respect for this woman bloom in his chest. She wasn't dazzled by the opportunity or by his wealth. She was negotiating from a place of self-worth and clear priorities. It was refreshing and humbling. "Agreed on all counts," he said. "Plus one more condition from my side. You have to promise to call me out when I'm being a billionaire instead of being a person. I need someone who will remind me why we're doing this when I get lost in the details." Elena smiled and extended her hand. "Deal." They shook on it, and Lily cheered as if she understood the magnitude of what had just happened. Maybe she did, in her own way. Children were often wiser than adults gave them credit for. Over the next few hours, they brainstormed ideas for the program. What services would be included? How would they select participants? What support systems would ensure people succeeded rather than just being handed money and expected to figure it out? Elena's insights were invaluable. She knew that childcare needed to cover evening hours for students with night classes, that textbook costs could make or break a budget, that transportation was often an overlooked barrier. Marcus found himself energized in a way he hadn't been in years. This was what he'd been missing: work that mattered, that connected to real human needs instead of abstract market forces. He was building something with someone, not commanding from on high. As the evening grew late and Lily started yawning, Elena began to gather their things. "Thank you," she said to Marcus. "For everything. For last night, for tonight, for this opportunity. You've changed our lives." "You changed mine first," Marcus said honestly. "If you and Lily hadn't walked through that door when you did." He trailed off, not needing to finish the sentence. Elena stepped forward and hugged him, and Marcus hugged her back, grateful for the warmth of human connection. When they pulled apart, Lily demanded her own hug, which Marcus was more than happy to provide. "Will we see you tomorrow?" Lily asked hopefully. "Absolutely," Marcus promised. "We have a lot of work to do, and I'm going to need both of you to help me figure it out." After they left, Marcus stood in his office, no longer sterile and empty, but filled with the remnants of their picnic, with Lily's drawings scattered on his desk, with the warmth of friendship and purpose. He pulled out his phone and made a note. "Beautiful thing today, building something that matters with people who care." Then he made a call to his therapist, someone he'd stopped seeing months ago because he'd convinced himself nothing could help. He left a message asking to schedule an appointment. The pills were gone, but he knew that surviving wasn't the same as healing. He needed help to do this right. Over the following weeks and months, Marcus's life transformed. The Second Chances program became his primary focus, and Elena became not just his partner in the initiative but his friend, his first real friend in years. Lily became a regular presence in his life, bringing her unique blend of wisdom and whimsy to their planning sessions. Marcus didn't stop being a billionaire, but he stopped letting that be his entire identity. He restructured his role at Tech to focus on the aspects he was passionate about while delegating the parts that had been draining him. He started attending therapy regularly and was honest about his struggles with depression. He began building a life that had room for relationships, for small, beautiful moments, for meaning beyond money. The darkness didn't disappear overnight. There were still hard days, days when getting out of bed felt impossible, days when the weight of existence pressed down on him. But on those days, he had people to call. He had Elena checking in on him, Lily sending him crayon drawings of cheer-up stars, his therapist helping him develop coping strategies, and a growing circle of genuine friends he'd made through the foundation work. 1 year after that fateful night when Lily had toddled into his office, Marcus stood at the podium of a press conference announcing the first cohort of Second Chances program recipients. 50 single parents would receive full support to complete their education, each one carefully selected not just on need, but on potential and determination. Elena stood beside him on the stage, now the program director with her own office and a child care center on-site where Lily spent her days. When Marcus finished his prepared remarks, he improvised one final thought. "A year ago, I was ready to give up," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his chest. "I thought I had nothing left to give and nothing worth living for. Then a 3-year-old girl walked into my office and reminded me that sometimes the smallest people carry the biggest light. She and her mother taught me that life isn't about what you've achieved or accumulated. It's about connection, purpose, and the courage to keep going even when everything feels impossible." He looked at Elena and Lily sitting in the front row. Lily waved enthusiastically, and Elena's eyes shimmered with tears. This program exists because two people saw me at my lowest moment and chose kindness instead of judgment, Marcus continued. They gave me a reason to stay, and now I want to help others find their reasons too. Because everyone deserves a second chance at education, at dreams, at life itself. The applause that followed was thunderous, but Marcus barely heard it. He was too busy watching Lily scramble up onto the stage, dragging Mr. Hoppy behind her. She walked right up to him and took his hand. "I'm proud of you," she announced seriously, using a phrase she'd clearly picked up from her mother. "You're doing good helping." Marcus knelt down and hugged her, this child who had saved his life simply by being herself. "Thank you, Lily. Thank you for seeing stars where I only saw lights." "That's 'cause the stars were always there," Lily said wisely. "You just had to remember to look." And surrounded by people whose lives he was about to change, standing next to the woman and child who had already changed his, Marcus Chin finally understood what it meant to be alive. Not just surviving, not just existing, but truly alive, connected, purposeful, and full of gratitude for the unexpected moments that reshape everything. He had been ready to give up. A toddler had interrupted him at exactly the right moment. And that had made all the difference.